Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, wondering what the future might look like as you grow older? For many of us, especially after 70, the thought of living alone starts to feel heavy. Health issues creep in, the bills never stop coming, and sometimes the silence of an empty home feels like too much to bear. And so the idea begins to take root. Maybe I should move in with my children. Maybe that's the answer. On the surface, it sounds comforting, even hopeful. You picture family dinners together, laughter with the grandchildren, the warmth of knowing someone is always there if you need them. Feels safe, feels secure, feels like love in action. But here's the part that almost nobody talks about. The reality of moving in with your children at an older age can be very, very different from the dream. What starts as a decision made with love can slowly turn into one of the greatest regrets of your life. And too often, by the time you realize it, it's already too late. In fact, I learned this the hard way. I moved in with my children at 72, believing it would solve my problems, but instead I lost nearly everything that made me feel alive. My independence, my privacy, even parts of my identity. What I thought would be a blessing became a slow unraveling of the life I had worked so hard to build. And I am not alone. More and more seniors are making this choice every year, often because it feels like the only option. But if you don't go into it with your eyes wide open, the hidden costs can blindside you. In today's video, I want to share with you the 7 biggest dangers of moving in with your children after 70. These are not just minor inconveniences. They are life-changing consequences that can affect your happiness, your health, your dignity, and even your future security. Here's a quick look at what we're going to uncover together. The slow but steady loss of independence and control over your daily life. The emotional strain and unspoken tensions that build beneath the surface in even the most loving families. The loss of privacy and personal space that can leave you feeling like a stranger in your own life. The financial risks and hidden costs no one warns you about. The health and safety issues that come from living in a home not built for your needs. The quiet isolation and loss of purpose that creeps in when you give up your own environment. And finally, the legal and legacy risks that could jeopardize everything you've worked to protect. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand these 7 reasons, you'll also discover how to protect yourself, your dignity, and your future before making a decision that could change your life forever. So if you've ever wondered whether living with family in old age is truly wise, this video is for you. One of the first and most painful realities seniors discover after moving in with their children is the quiet but relentless loss of independence and control. First, it doesn't seem so bad. Your children offer to help you with groceries, to drive you to doctor's appointments, to remind you to take your medications. And you think to yourself, how lucky I am to have such supportive family. But then the small changes begin to pile up. Meals are no longer whenever you feel hungry. They're when the family sits down together. Your morning routine, once sacred and unshakable, now has to fit around the noise of kids rushing to school or your daughter needing the bathroom at the same time you do. Even the simple choice of what to watch on television or when to turn the lights off at night becomes tied to someone else's preferences. Day by day, the little freedoms you once took for granted, eating when you want, walking outside when you want, cooking the food you like, arranging your schedule around your life, begin to slip out of your hands. And here's the part that's hardest to admit. Often you don't even notice it right away. It happens gradually, quietly, like sand slipping through your fingers. One day you wake up and realize you are no longer the one calling the shots in your own life. Take the story of Alan, age 74. Alan was used to a simple rhythm. He loved waking up early, tending to his garden, and going for a walk at dusk. After moving in with his daughter's family, that rhythm was broken. The garden wasn't his anymore. The dinner schedule clashed with his evening walks, and the grandchildren's needs always seemed to come first. First he tried to adapt, but slowly he stopped walking, he stopped gardening, and he stopped voicing what he really wanted because it always felt like an inconvenience. Within months, Alan felt like a shadow of himself, trapped inside someone else's home. This is not just about routines. cuts deeper. When you no longer decide what you eat, when you sleep, or how you spend your time, you start to lose your sense of identity. You begin to feel like a guest in your own life, hesitant to ask for too much, worried about being a burden, careful not to upset the balance of the household. Psychologists have a name for this: loss of autonomy. And it doesn't just bruise your pride. It can slowly chip away at your mental health. Research published in Taylor and Francis Online shows that when older adults receive too much control or support from their children, their sense of autonomy declines. And this is directly linked to poorer emotional well-being. In simple terms, when you stop being the driver of your life, you risk slipping into helplessness, depression, and a dangerous loss of self-worth. The saddest part? Your children might not even see it happening. To them, they're helping, they're caring, they're protecting. But what they don't see is how that constant help slowly erases the confidence you built over decades of living independently. Loneliness in older adults is linked to higher risks of depression, cognitive decline, dementia, and even premature mortality. In fact, some scientists argue that chronic loneliness can be as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But here's the painful irony. You can feel profoundly lonely even when you're surrounded by family. And in some ways, that kind of loneliness is the worst. It's not the emptiness of an empty house, but the ache of invisibility, being in the room but not being seen. You see your children rushing to work, tending to their kids, juggling their busy lives. You want to talk, to share, to teach, but you don't want to interrupt or add to their stress. Slowly you withdraw. Conversations shrink to the practical. What's for dinner? Did you take your medicine? Your identity, once that of a parent, a provider, a mentor, even the head of the family, dissolves into that of a dependent. And with that shift comes a deep question. What is my purpose now? For decades, you may have been the one people turn to for wisdom, stability, or support. But in your children's household, your role is subtly suppressed. You're no longer the elder at the head of the table. You're someone who needs watching, scheduling, managing. Your sense of contribution diminishes. And when the human spirit feels it has nothing meaningful to give, decline begins. Not just emotionally, but cognitively. Let me share a story. Take Clara, age 79. For years she lived independently, volunteering at her local library and running a small knitting club. She was active, joyful, engaged. But after a minor stroke, she moved in with her son for safety. First she was relieved, but within months her old routines disappeared. No more volunteering, no knitting circle. Her friends rarely visited, and she felt uncomfortable asking her son for rides. Surrounded by people every day, Clara began to feel invisible. Within a year, she was diagnosed with depression. Kids, their marriage, and now your needs, even small disagreements can feel overwhelming. They may not say it out loud, but their patience stretches thin. That love doesn't vanish, but the atmosphere shifts. What began with joy turns into quiet pressure that nobody wants to admit. Let's take the story of Eleanor, age 78. After her husband passed away, she moved in with her son's family, thinking it would bring her comfort. And at first it did. She played with her grandchildren, joined family dinners, and felt included. But slowly boundaries formed. She was told which seat at the table was hers. She was asked not to rearrange the kitchen. Certain topics became off-limits. And when she voiced her opinions, they were gently brushed aside. Outwardly, everything seemed fine. But inwardly, she began to feel invisible, a guest in her own family. This invisible strain is more common than most families admit. According to caregiving research from Summerfield of Redlands, when multiple generations live together, hidden resentments and caregiver stress are among the top challenges. The children feel stretched thin, the parents feel like a burden, and nobody knows how to talk about it. The result? Silent frustration that slowly chips away at love and connection. And here's the heartbreaking part. This tension doesn't always explode in open fights. Most of the time, it simmers quietly beneath the surface. Everyone keeps smiling, pretending all is well. But behind those polite nods and forced smiles lies exhaustion, sadness, and sometimes even resentment. The psychological toll can be heavy. For seniors, it often leads to feelings of displacement. Where do I truly belong? Am I wanted or just tolerated? And for the children, it can lead to caregiver burnout, a state of emotional and physical exhaustion that makes patience and compassion harder to maintain. Living together may strengthen bonds in some cases, yes, but far more often it strains them. What you hoped would bring your family closer can, without careful boundaries, quietly push you apart. And while this emotional burden weighs heavy, it also sets the stage for another painful loss, one that strikes at the very heart of your daily life. Now let's go deeper, because your privacy is at risk. When you've lived independently for years, even decades, there's a rhythm and freedom in your own home that's hard to put into words. You wake up when you want, you prepare your meals how you like, you take an afternoon nap without interruption, and you can sit in silence or play music without worrying who else might be disturbed. But when you move in with your adult children, that changes almost overnight. Suddenly, your home is no longer just yours. It's a shared space. And with that, your privacy becomes one of the first things to vanish. Start small. A knock on the door while you're resting. A grandchild bursting in while you're on the phone with an old friend. A daughter-in-law rearranging the kitchen cabinets to fit her style, when you once had every item exactly where you liked it. These interruptions might seem harmless at first, but they build. Slowly, you begin to feel like there's nowhere you can retreat to just be with yourself. Even small, intimate rituals, sipping tea alone in the quiet, praying without disturbance, or journaling your thoughts, suddenly require negotiation. You may find yourself waiting for everyone to go to bed just to have a few minutes of peace, or censoring your conversations on the phone because you feel someone might overhear. And that self-censorship takes a toll. You stop expressing yourself fully, you hold back, and over time you start shrinking inside your own life. This isn't just about comfort. It's about dignity, freedom, and the ability to live authentically in your later years. Studies have shown that crowding and loss of personal space are directly tied to higher risks of depression and anxiety. Kids, their marriage, and now your needs, even small disagreements can feel overwhelming. They may not say it out loud, but their patience stretches thin. That love doesn't vanish, but the atmosphere shifts. What began with joy turns into quiet pressure that nobody wants to admit. Let's take the story of Eleanor, age 78. After her husband passed away, she moved in with her son's family, thinking it would bring her comfort. And at first it did. She played with her grandchildren, joined family dinners, and felt included. But slowly boundaries formed. She was told which seat at the table was hers. She was asked not to rearrange the kitchen. Certain topics became off-limits. And when she voiced her opinions, they were gently brushed aside. Outwardly, everything seemed fine. But inwardly, she began to feel invisible, a guest in her own family. This invisible strain is more common than most families admit. According to caregiving research from Summerfield of Redlands, when multiple generations live together, hidden resentments and caregiver stress are among the top challenges. The children feel stretched thin, the parents feel like a burden, and nobody knows how to talk about it. The result? Silent frustration that slowly chips away at love and connection. And here's the heartbreaking part. This tension doesn't always explode in open fights. Most of the time, it simmers quietly beneath the surface. Everyone keeps smiling, pretending all is well. But behind those polite nods and forced smiles lies exhaustion, sadness, and sometimes even resentment. The psychological toll can be heavy. For seniors, it often leads to feelings of displacement. Where do I truly belong? Am I wanted or just tolerated? And for the children, it can lead to caregiver burnout, a state of emotional and physical exhaustion that makes patience and compassion harder to maintain. Living together may strengthen bonds in some cases, yes, but far more often it strains them. And beyond day-to-day costs, there are serious legal and financial risks that few families consider. For example, if you give up your property or transfer assets to your children in exchange for housing, you may unknowingly jeopardize your eligibility for critical benefits like Medicaid or public assistance programs. Cranfill Sumner LLP. The government looks carefully at asset transfers, and what feels like a simple family decision can have life-altering consequences later if long-term care is needed. There's also the question of caregiving. Even in loving families, when health declines, someone ends up taking on more responsibility, driving to doctor's appointments, managing medications, providing physical help. And while your children may not expect payment for their time, these duties have real costs: lost work hours, gas money, and emotional burnout. Over time, those hidden caregiving expenses can weigh heavily on everyone involved. HumanGood.org. Another financial tension comes from the absence of clear agreements. Many families move in together without ever defining who pays what. Do you contribute to groceries, utilities, repairs? Is there a written plan for how unexpected medical bills will be handled? Without clarity, resentment builds. Adult children may feel burdened, parents may feel unappreciated, and what was meant to be a financial solution becomes a source of conflict. All of this creates a sobering truth. Moving in with family rarely eliminates financial stress. In fact, it often reshapes it, trading one set of expenses for another, while adding layers of legal, emotional, and relational risks. When older adults move in with their children, one of the most overlooked dangers is the physical environment itself. Your child's home was designed for their family, not for aging bodies. That means the very place meant to shelter you could become a source of daily hazards. Rugs, cords, and clutter that a young person barely notices can spell disaster for someone with slower reflexes or balance issues. In fact, falls are one of the leading causes of injury and hospitalization among seniors. And a house that isn't senior-friendly only magnifies that risk. And while your children may love you dearly, they are not trained caregivers. They may not recognize early signs of a health decline, or they might overlook crucial medication schedules. A daughter may mean well by helping you into bed, but one wrong move could injure both of you. According to senior care advisors, many families overestimate their ability to handle the medical and physical needs of an aging parent. Without professional training, even the most attentive family member can make mistakes that compromise your safety. Summerfield of Encinitas, Florida Senior Consulting Advisors. Then there's the reality of caregiver burnout. At first, your child may feel proud to care for you, but as the weeks turn into months, and the months into years, the strain accumulates. They're juggling jobs, their own children, household responsibilities, and now your care. That stress doesn't just affect them. It affects you. Because when caregivers are exhausted, overwhelmed, or resentful, the quality of care inevitably suffers. HumanGood.org. Florida Senior Consulting Advisors. Meals might be rushed. Doctor's appointments may be delayed. Little things like personal grooming, exercise, or companionship can fall through the cracks. And you, the elder, end up with less attention and support than you truly need. But there's an even darker truth we must acknowledge. Living in multigenerational households increases vulnerability to elder abuse or financial exploitation. It's an uncomfortable subject, but it's real. Studies and reports, even summarized in places like Wikipedia, show that when financial stress and emotional strain pile up, seniors can become targets. Sometimes it's unintentional neglect. Other times, sadly, it's deliberate exploitation. Controlling money, limiting freedom, or even verbal mistreatment. And when you live under someone else's roof, your options to escape or protect yourself are limited. All of this combines into a sobering picture. While moving in with family may seem like a safer option, it often introduces new and serious health and safety risks. The home isn't designed for your needs. The caregivers may not be trained. Burnout can erode quality of care. And in the worst cases, vulnerability can open doors to mistreatment. The very decision meant to protect your well-being can, ironically, end up threatening it. When most people imagine moving in with their children, they picture warmth, chatter, and togetherness. They think, "I'll never be alone again. I'll be surrounded by family." But the reality is far more complex. Living under one roof does not guarantee connection. In fact, it can often decrease it. Why? Because when you leave your own home, your neighborhood, your community, your daily patterns, you lose more than a physical space. You lose the web of routines and relationships that gave your life structure. The coffee chats with neighbors, the walks in familiar parks, the weekly church service where people greet you by name, the friendships that only exist in your circle, not your children's. Once you move in with your kids, those connections begin to fade. Friends visit less because it feels awkward or inconvenient. You hesitate to invite anyone over because it's their house, not yours. Soon, the social network you built over decades, one of the strongest predictors of healthy aging, starts to shrink. And with that shrinking comes a subtle but dangerous enemy: isolation. Research has shown again and again that loneliness is not just an emotional burden, it's a medical one. According to studies summarized on Wikipedia, and her memory began slipping, her doctor gently explained, "It's not just your brain, Clara. It's the loneliness. It's the loss of purpose." Her story is not rare. It is the hidden danger of this living arrangement. Because while moving in may solve immediate problems, a fall risk, a financial gap, it can quietly strip away the very things that keep you alive in the long run. Independence, friendships, a sense of worth, and above all, purpose. And without purpose, the human heart shrinks. The mind dulls. The days blur. And even though your body is under the same roof as family, your spirit feels more alone than ever. Of all the dangers that come with moving in with your children, this last one may be the most devastating and the most permanent. It's not just about your comfort, or your independence, or even your health. It's about your legacy. When you make the decision to merge households, you are also, often without realizing it, merging finances, responsibilities, and assets. And unless you've taken strong, proactive legal steps, you could be putting everything you've built over a lifetime at risk. Here's the reality. Many older adults enter this arrangement informally. No contracts, no legal clarity, just trust and love. My children will look after me, you think. We're family. But when it comes to money, property, and inheritance, trust without structure can turn into the most painful vulnerability. Consider property. Maybe you own a home, but when you move in with your children, you decide to sell it. You put the money toward their mortgage, or you sign over the deed for simplicity. At first, it feels like a generous and practical solution. But what happens if the relationship sours? What happens if divorce, debt, or bankruptcy strike your child's household? Suddenly, the home you helped pay for or once owned outright is tied up in legal disputes, creditors' claims, or family tension. You've lost not only your independence, but also your safety net. Or take finances. Often, adult children encourage their parents to consolidate bank accounts for convenience. They may ask for power of attorney just in case. And while many children are honest and responsible, too many cases exist where this power is misused. Coercion, undue influence, quiet withdrawals, decisions made on your behalf that serve their interests, not yours. The elder ends up stripped of control, watching helplessly as decades of savings disappear. Wikipedia documents many examples of elder financial abuse under multigenerational living arrangements. Here's another truth. Legal blindness. Without consulting elder law attorneys or putting everything in writing, you may assume that family agreements will hold weight in the eyes of the law. They often don't. As firms like Cranfield Sumner LLP point out, failing to formalize caregiving agreements, property transfers, or financial responsibilities can create messy, painful disputes down the road. Siblings may argue over what was promised. Children may disagree about what's fair. Courts may step in, and by then it's too late. And let's not ignore benefits. By transferring assets or giving up property without guidance, you could unintentionally jeopardize eligibility for Medicaid, housing assistance, or other forms of public aid. What seemed like a loving move could end up costing you not only your estate, but also access to resources you may desperately need later in life. The emotional cost of this is enormous. Imagine spending your final years realizing that everything you worked for, every dollar saved, every brick of the house you built, every heirloom meant for your grandchildren, has been swallowed by poor planning, family tension, or exploitation. That your story, your values, your legacy are at risk of disappearing. And the hardest part? Most of this doesn't happen in dramatic bursts. It happens quietly. A signature here. Check there.